Next year is our year. Here marks the end of another disappointing season with no championship, and like clockwork, every Ferrari fan starts dreaming about the prospects of next season. Honestly, this team will well and truly have a way of driving their fans completely insane. And that includes Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton, their current driver pairing. As a wise man once said, everybody's a Ferrari fan. I mean, what do you think brought these drivers over to Maranello in the first place? It's the brand, the allure, the aura. Many drivers come in talking about how they want to bring glory back to Ferrari. You go to the Italian Grand Prix at Monza, you see the Tifosi, the sea of red, and you think to yourself, ooh, if only I were a Ferrari driver, what would it be like? You reminisce about the glory days and wonder whether you, yes, you, can single-handedly end a near 2-decade title drought and bring a championship back home to Maranello. All this sounds amazing in theory, until you actually drive for Ferrari, and you get hit with such a vicious dose of reality, you even start to question your own existence.
Not happy. I mean, tough weekend so far.
It's not going well.
The car was very slow today.
Gave it everything, and that's up to me.
Didn't feel that bad, but we are slow. So
I think at this point, it's just about having fun.
What started out as a hopeful, promising venture turns into what can only be described as a depressing experience. This is the exact trajectory I took back when I found out my two favorite drivers would be teammates at Ferrari. And given how much the SF24 improved in the second half of 2024, I think there was at least reasonable justification to be hyped about this partnership. They won the preseason Aura Farming Championship by miles, moving like they were about to completely annihilate the rest of the grid, only to show up with a car that is more fragile than a box of eggs. Better not drop the ride height too low, otherwise the plank will wear down to a literal toothpick and get both drivers disqualified. But raising the ride height makes them slower, as if they weren't already slow enough. Not to mention, the car behaves with such unpredictability, driving it becomes more about survival than anything else. Oh, and forget about using the brakes. If you don't do 300 meters of lift and coast every corner, the brakes will simply explode. That, in a nutshell, is the SF25, a car that was expected to be the challenger for the Constructors' Championship, a car that was expected to give Charles and Lewis a fighting chance at winning the Drivers' Championship. So what went wrong over the winter break in 2024? Long story short, they decided to change 99% of their car in the last year of a regulation cycle. Now, you're also probably wondering, why would they even do that? Why not just evolve their 2024 car? According to them, there wasn't much room for potential left in their old philosophy, so they decided to, more or less, start from scratch. But you know what? As much as I wasn't happy about the car's performance, stuff like this happens. Teams up and down the grid sometimes get it wrong from year to year. Ferrari were overly ambitious and underestimated how difficult it would be to switch to a completely new concept. This is a competitive sport. If other teams do a better job, then that's just the way it is. But the main issue that bothers me is Ferrari's upper management. How they react in times of crisis, the politics, the Italian media peddling false narratives to create instability. When things go wrong, they just can't help themselves but overreact and shift the blame onto literally anything and anyone but themselves.
This whole thing, all of this, it's all about me.
And might I just say, I recently just finished Breaking Bad, absolute 10 out of 10 series. But don't you just find that sometimes a movie or show just isn't available in your country? I know, it's pretty annoying when that happens. But thankfully, private internet access have your back as today's video sponsor. Watching Netflix without PIA is like paying for business class, but you can only board economy. You're not getting the full package. Many websites and services across the internet are only accessible depending on your physical location. But with PIA, you can overcome these restrictions with just a few clicks, since it gives you the option to change your IP address to one of their 91 countries to choose from. Private internet access is also the world's most transparent VPN provider, with over 30 million downloads. So if you're like me and have Ferrari-induced trust issues, there's no need to panic. Private internet access has you covered. Their reviews on Trustpilot are simply lovely. So by using my link in the description, you can grab an 86% discount on private internet access, which comes to about $2.03 a month. But wait, it gets better. They're also offering 4 extra months completely for free. And what's great is that once you've got the subscription, you can use it to protect an unlimited amount of devices at the same time. Finally, signing up for PIA is risk-free since they have a 30-day money-back guarantee. So do yourself a favor, snap up this offer while you still can, and thanks again to Private Internet Access for sponsoring this video.
Piastri's got to run 3 wide into turn number 1. How brave is Piastri feeling? He hits Antonelli, who hits Charles Leclerc.
The Brazilian Grand Prix was one of the many weekends in 2025 that made life as a Ferrari fan just depressing. Another double DNF for both drivers. What more could possibly go wrong this season? It's moments like these where a team really needs to unite behind the scenes. With all the criticisms from the media and the fans, you need a leader that will rally everyone up and provide some positive encouragement when the going gets tough. So here's what John Elkann had to say. There is no doubt that the car has improved thanks to the engineers. For the rest, the level is not up to par. And it's crucial that our drivers focus on driving and talk less.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
I think we all had a similar reaction to these comments. Some laughed, others crashed out, but genuinely, never let bro cook again. He thought he did a good thing with that interview, but all he did was give people a reason to just roast him and initiate discussion on why Ferrari needs restructuring, starting with the people at the top. The last time Ferrari won a Constructors' Championship was 2008, and the last time they won a Drivers' Championship was 2007, almost 2 decades ago. And during that period of title drought, they've had the following drivers behind the wheel of their cars. Fernando Alonso, double world champion. Sebastian Vettel, 4-time world champion. Charles Leclerc, one of the most talented drivers of this generation. And Lewis Hamilton, the most successful driver in the history of the sport. And yet somehow, the reason for Ferrari's lack of success is down to those guys. Ignorance at its absolute peak. There was speculation during the midpoint of the season when Fred Vasseur was at risk of being axed, and at the time, he said, "We must ask ourselves the right questions. If Ferrari hasn't won for years, we've changed the team principle, the drivers, we've changed everything except one thing. I wonder who he could be referring to." Jenson Button left a comment under one of the posts reporting on what Elkann said and put, "Maybe John should lead by example."
It's too late. Far too late.
Leadership instability has been a fundamental problem for the Scuderia during their titleless drought. Since 2008, they've had 5 different team principals. Currently, it's Vasseur. Before him, it was Binotto. Before him, it was Arrivabene. And before him, it was Marco Mattiacci, who was there for only 7 months. And then finally, Stefano Domenicali, a man who since leaving that team has gone on to become the CEO of Formula 1. In fact, he's not the only Ferrari team member to leave and see success. James Allison, moving to Mercedes in 2017, leading the technical development of some monstrous cars like the W11. Or recently, Laurent Mekies, who left Ferrari in mid-2023 to join AlphaTauri as team principal, and this year stepping in as Horner's replacement at Red Bull. And we've seen just how much of a positive influence he's been on both teams. Another great example is Andrea Stella, who left the Scuderia after 15 years at the team to join McLaren. He arrived at Woking in 2015, the point where the team were at their absolute lowest since the turn of the millennium, acting as one of the most influential figures in their transformation over the past 10 years. Slowly by slowly, McLaren built themselves back up into a winning machine again, winning the Constructors' title this year and last year, and seeing Lando Norris become their first drivers' champion since Lewis Hamilton in 2008. A man who has been a complete and utter nightmare for them ever since the last corner of the last lap in Brazil. A single driver who since joining the sport in 2007 has gone on to win 105 races. Meanwhile, Ferrari as a team have won 56 in that time period. In terms of poles, it's 104 to 68 in Hamilton's favour. And let's not even talk about drivers' championships. The only one they've got over him was 2007, his first ever year in Formula 1. Since then, Lewis has gone on to transcend the sport, breaking every record in the books and leaving nothing but a trail of dust in his wake for the Italian team. And Ferrari thought to themselves, we need him. Not realizing they already had multi-world champions in their cars who prior to joining also sustained periods of major success. Fernando Alonso won back-to-back championships with Renault, and Sebastian Vettel won 4 on the bounce with Red Bull. And yet still, Ferrari couldn't make it work. So what's the real issue here? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. The upper management at this team will literally point fingers and blame everyone apart from themselves. No self-awareness, no ability to have any sort of internal reflection on how they can improve things for the greater good of the organization, just politics. Politics and more politics. Honestly, this level of rage bait I wasn't expecting from someone so corporate. Trying to comprehend or rationalize these comments was just impossible. This was actually some people's last straw into them completely losing their minds. But John Elkann's comments perfectly sum up their stance of when they win, it's all thanks to the team building an amazing car, but when things aren't going so well, the blame is pinned on the drivers who must never criticize the great Ferrari. But the drivers have every right to express their frustration if the car is bad. They're the ones behind the wheel, feeling every single imbalance, nuance, and area of weakness. So when they point out that something is very wrong, I don't know, maybe it would be an idea to listen. Particularly to a driver who has been with the team for 7 seasons, and another driver who has been in Formula 1 for almost 20 years. Believe it or not, they might just know what they're talking about. Telling them to effectively shut up and drive is the quickest way to not only burning bridges, but also never making progress towards winning a championship. And in all honesty, it's quite sad to see how a team with such incredible potential can't get their operation to click in the way it needs to be successful. Ferrari have all the right ingredients, world-class facilities, vast resources, extremely talented individuals, and yet still find a way to make a mess of everything. They have an abundance of incredibly smart people working behind the scenes, brilliant mechanics who this season were absolutely on fire when it came to pit stops, 2 supremely talented drivers, one who is currently in his prime and another who is a champion, a legend, the driver who knows better than anyone what it takes to win. What they have to offer in terms of feedback is so valuable, and if Ferrari wants to be successful, they will need to make the drivers the focal point of their development. Actively listen to their suggestions for areas in which they can improve, not just with regards to the car, but the strategy, overall execution during a race weekend, allowing for more flexible restructuring, and actually put them into practice. Oftentimes, driver feedback at Ferrari falls on deaf ears. For instance, Hamilton this season talked a lot about putting documents together and sending them to various senior figures in the organization, holding meetings with the upper management themselves to discuss how the team can operate more efficiently. Something his ex-rival and friend Sebastian Vettel tried to do for years, but to no avail. Maurizio Arrivabene, who was the team principal at the time, talked about this in an interview recently and said Vettel's efforts were almost useless. Now, of course, it's been a long time since Seb was at Ferrari, and a lot of Ferrari's leadership from back then are now gone. But it's that very attitude of we're right and you're wrong, we always know what's best, that just cripples them. And I honestly believe this is something that eventually caused Vettel to burn out. He started out at Ferrari with so much life, so much fire, so much energy, but at some point, the dude was almost unrecognizable. Being at Ferrari definitely took its toll on him, as it has for many others. Meanwhile, here are Adrian Newey's opinions on the matter. People in the industry spend too long looking at the data and not long enough listening to what the driver is saying, because the driver is the most sensitive sensor in the car. And this is coming from a man who has worked directly with Sebastian and won 4 championships in a row with. The same man who has also succeeded with countless other legends in Formula 1 history, with the most recent being Max Verstappen, and soon to be Fernando Alonso. Nobody in the history of Formula 1 has won more championships than Adrian Newey, so might be an idea to take a page or 2 from his book. The feedback loop between drivers and engineers is essential. It's part of the reason why Williams have seen such an upturn in results, why Red Bull were able to turn their season around in the second half and go on a championship comeback, why Norris was able to eventually win his first world championship after McLaren implemented modifications to help him feel more comfortable in the car. Instead of getting offended and thinking, we know best, Ferrari would benefit from listening to the drivers they hire. I mean, why even recruit such amazing drivers to represent the brand and then proceed to ignore them whenever they make meaningful contributions? It's just baffling, but not new. Alain Prost arrived at Ferrari as world champion in 1990 and almost defended his crown against his main rival, Ayrton Senna. But in one of the most infamous crashes in Formula 1 history, the Brazilian took him out at the first corner to secure the championship in Suzuka. So for the following year in 1991, they came into the season with lofty expectations. Their goal was more than clear, to avenge the misfortunes of 1990 and win both championships. But instead, Ferrari turned up with only a slightly evolved version of their car from the previous season, while other teams like McLaren and Williams made much bigger steps in terms of performance. While challenging for the championship in 1990, they put too much focus into developing the 641 instead of preparing to develop the 642, resulting in an underwhelming car at the start of 91. So he pressured the team into completely redesigning the chassis of the 642 with their new car, the Ferrari 643, which was introduced at round 7 of the season, the French Grand Prix. Initially, it showed some signs of promise as Prost almost won his home race. However, the 643 was still quite a complicated car that overall wasn't competitive enough to challenge its rivals. Tension had been building for a while, for a long list of reasons. The same reasons we usually hear about today. Poor on-track performance, internal politics, strategic disagreements, but the root of it all stemmed from a power struggle and Prost's public criticism of the team. He was trying to help Ferrari improve from an operational standpoint, but there was a lot of politics involved in preventing him from obtaining too much power within the team. From the Italian media to the upper management, it was Prost versus Ferrari, instead of them forming a united front. Eventually, the tipping point came at the Japanese Grand Prix, resulting in him being fired one race before the end of the season. The fallout between Alain Prost and Ferrari is one of the best examples of everything wrong with that team. And it is far from the last story about how tumultuous and toxic the environment can get. Everything is about image. The Prancing Horse isn't just a brand, it's an icon for the nation of Italy, a symbol of hope, pride, and honor. But it's that very thing which ends up being their downfall. But throughout their entire history lies an outlier, the Schumacher dynasty. When Jean Todt joined Ferrari in the early 90s, he inherited a team plagued by politics, inconsistency, and pressure from the top. He knew that if Ferrari was ever going to win again, the culture had to change. And thus, he brought in the reigning double world champion to be the cornerstone of that transformation. Schumacher didn't come alone. He brought with him trusted minds who helped him win his first 2 championships, namely Ross Brawn and Rory Byrne. And together, they built something of a secret pact amongst themselves, the Dream Team. They worked as one unit, shielding themselves from the chaos and interference from Ferrari's upper management. In fact, in 1996, Todt was actually at risk of being axed by Ferrari, only for Michael to step in and say, "If Jean goes, I go." And that kind of unity served as the foundation for their years of dominance later on. Inside their circle, the team operated differently. There was just this obsession with performance, but eventually, the dynasty collapsed. Still, that era remains the blueprint. The proof that Ferrari can win when it lets its drivers, engineers, and leaders do what they do best. But somehow, everyone seems to understand that lesson, except Ferrari themselves. In 2025, the car was simply not good enough to compete for wins, let alone a world title. And subsequently, their best bet was to switch their focus onto the new regulations for 2026. Whether they'll be fast or not, your guess is as good as mine. Genuinely, nobody has any idea who will emerge as the front runners, even the teams themselves. So there's no point speculating, to be honest, just wait for Australia. And there's always hope, or as some say, delusion, that Ferrari will outgrow their stubbornness and start taking accountability for their shortcomings, that they will build a car worthy of their drivers and not allow politics to interfere with their Formula 1 team. Because how great would it be to see Leclerc in a proper title fight, not one that lasts 10 races? How great would it be to see Hamilton go for one last dance in a championship-capable car? And I know, 2025 was poor, but a factor many seem to overlook is that a driver swap of this magnitude takes time to bear fruit. Only 2 drivers in F1 history have changed teams after driving with one for more than 10 years. And those 2 just happen to be the most successful drivers of all time. Both struggled in their first season, but as time went on, Michael just kept on improving. And I have a feeling that the same will happen with Lewis. Every team works differently, and the adjustment period can take longer than expected. But I still fully believe in Lewis's ability, the same way I fully believe in Charles's ability. He's naturally quick, born to race, extremely competitive and resilient, has experienced hardships and overcome them like a hero. Ferrari are sitting on a goldmine of talent. Heck, it's something that they've always had in abundance. But they won't see major success again if they can't get rid of the self-induced obstacles that have been holding them back for years on end. I hope you all enjoyed. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you're new to get my latest videos in the future. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.